structure. Good afternoon all. We'll begin with physiology of vision. Here I would be taking the structure in short because you'll have already got structure of eye in anatomy in details. So we'll just see it in short. Structure of the eyeball. Okay. So structure of the eyeball is made up of 3 layers as we know. I want everyone to draw with me so that it becomes easy for you all also to draw in the exam. I'm drawing the outer layer. This outer layer is called as the sclera. Now, so till the blue color margin, that if you can see the blue color margin, that is cornea, and the yellow color is called as the sclera. Now the eyeball is made up of 3 layers as we said. The one layer that I am drawing just now is the fibrous layer. So first layer is called fibrous layer. Fibrous means giving protection, giving a shape to the eyeball. So this fibrous layer is divided into 2 parts. The yellow color one which I have drawn is called as the sclera, which fits into the occipital fossa of the skull, right? And only the blue color region that I have drawn, which is non-vascular transparent structure, and that we can see, and that is called cornea, right? Now this was the first. So this is the first layer. The first layer is called as the fibrous layer, made up of 2 parts, sclera and cornea. Sclera is the posterior 3/4 and cornea is the anterior 1/4. Cornea is non-vascular, transparent, and sclera is a fibrous coat, tough, giving protection to the eyeball as well as giving shape to the eyeball. Now we go on to the next layer. This next layer is just very close to the cornea, and this layer is called as the vascular coat, you can put it as, or vascular layer. Layer is also called as tunic, so you can put it as fibrous tunic, you can put it as vascular tunic also, right? Now vascular, I'll show it with red color. So I don't have a red color, I will show it with this green color. The vascular coat is, I'm showing in green. It is giving blood supply to all the parts of the eyeball. Now this vascular coat also is made up of different parts, that is called as the uveal apparatus, and that is made up of ciliary muscles with ciliary ligaments, and these ciliary muscles and the ciliary ligaments, they hold the lens, right? So this lens, it is a proteinous transparent structure which is held in this suspensory ligament or ciliary ligament, which is attached to ciliary muscle and ciliary processes. All ciliary processes, ciliary muscles and the lens together forms the uveal part or the uveal apparatus, you can put it as. And the posterior part is the vascular region giving blood supply to the eyeball. So this is a non-transparent, this is a transparent proteinous lens, and which allows the vision to fall on the posterior part of the eyeball. The line that I have drawn is also called as the visual axis, through which the light is going to enter the eyeball and the image is going to fall on the posterior wall of the eyeball. I think till here it is clear. Now we go to the third layer, and the third layer is very important. This is also called as the nervous layer, or you can put it as nervous tunic. And this whole nervous tunic is also called as the retina. Again I'm repeating, eyeball is made up of 3 layers. Fibrous tunic, which is of 2 parts, sclera and cornea. Sclera fits into that occipital fossa of the skull, and cornea is the visual part, or we can see the cornea but we cannot see the sclera. Sclera is the posterior 2/3, cornea is the anterior 1/4. Okay, and now we go to the next, that is the vascular tunic, which is made up of the layer that has got a lot of blood supply, blood vessels in it, and therefore it is called vascular tunic. Also made up of ciliary muscles, ciliary processes, ciliary ligaments which holds the lens. Along with this, there is a structure in front of the ciliary muscles, and that is called as the iris. Okay. So all these processes together come in the second layer, that is vascular tunic. Now I am just labeling these parts. This is the ciliary muscle, iris. So the opening over here formed in that, the opening that forms with the help of iris is also called as pupil, through which the light is going to come in and out. Then is the ciliary ligaments, which are holding the lens. Between this sclera and the cornea, there is a structure called as canal of Schellen. Now this canal is going to demark between the two structures, canal of Schellen. Okay. Now this iris, ciliary muscles, all are supplied by autonomic nervous system. Therefore, if the pupil has to contract or dilate, it would depend on the autonomic nervous system, right? Now, as you can see, these structures itself divides the eyeball into two parts, one inside cavity and one in the anterior part. So anterior cavity is filled with a fluid which is called aqueous humor, and the posterior cavity is filled with a fluid which is called vitreous humor. Aqueous humor, vitreous humor and the lens have the same refractive index because the light has to pass through that refractive index and the image is formed in the posterior part of the eyeball, right? Now, I told you the inner layer I am drawing in blue, and that is called as the retina, which is a nervous layer, and it is containing the most sensitive part which helps us to see or visualize things, and it is made up of rods and cones. So retina is made up of rods and cones, and they are also called as photoreceptors. The place where the vision image is formed is also called as fovea centralis. Fovea centralis. Okay. Just below the fovea centralis, this retina forms the optic nerve. So, from the retina emerges the optic nerve, and this optic nerve is the second cranial nerve. Now, the region, the center of the optic nerve is also called as blind spot. Now, blind spot is a place where there is no image, or no image would be formed over here, or no transfer of image from this region. So the image has to formed in the visual axis only. So this is about, in short, anatomy, or you can say physiological anatomy of the eyeball. So now further we'll see in details about the structure of retina. Now retina is a nervous layer, it is the innermost layer, and from here originates the optic nerve, or you can say is the second cranial nerve. Retina is made up of two structures, rods and cones. Again, you should be able to draw this also very fast, rods and cones. Let's draw first the rod. As the structure says, it is made up, it's rod, therefore it is a cylindrical structure which is made up of many shelves together, and this rod further forms a nucleus and the synapse. Okay, so this is a rod. The rods are made up of numerous shells, and the lower segment has got numerous mitochondria or Golgi apparatus. Now rods and cones both are modified neurons. Now neurons are nerve itself, they are modified neurons. Also they are called as photoreceptors. Now the word photoreceptor, receptor means something that receives information. Photo means light. So light information is received by these two structures. Both are photoreceptors, only there is a difference of shape. Therefore they are called as rods and cones. Plus there are few functional differences on rods and cones, and therefore we have to find out what is the difference between rod and cone. Now as you can see, this rod structure is divided into, you can draw this line like this, the upper segment. So this is called as the upper segment, which is made up of many shells. You can see these are the shells. The lower segment is made up of mitochondria, Golgi apparatus. Still lower, it is made up of nucleus. And you can see down a structure like the axon, you can say, where it has to form a synapse. So here it will form a synapse with another structures. Now these shells are made up of pigment. So here in the shells is present a pigment. Okay, the pigment which is present in rod is called rhodopsin. Right. So till here am I clear? This is the diagram of rod. Again I am repeating, it is like the shape of a rod, therefore it is called rods. And it is a photoreceptor, it is a modified neuron, it is divided into two parts, upper segment and lower segment. Upper segment is made up of numerous shells. These shells contain a pigment called rhodopsin. Lower segment contains mitochondria to give energy, Golgi apparatus, the same modified cell. Still lower you would see it is made up of nucleus. Still lower you would see an axon like structure where there would be synapsing with other structures, other parts of the eyeball. Now let's see how this rod looks like, cone looks like. So cone is also made up of numerous structure, but it is conical in structure. As it is conical, therefore it is called cone. So this is how the cone would look like. It's a conical structure, and still further again there is a nucleus, and again an axon terminal. So this is what the rod would, the cone would look like. Again cone has got on the upper segment numerous shells. Again these shells contain a pigment which is called photopsin. So the pigment that is present in cone is called photopsin, while the pigment that is present in rod is called rhodopsin. Rest all the structures are same. Lower segment containing numerous mitochondria or Golgi apparatus. It also contains nucleus, right? So this is about the structure of rods and cones. In the exam, if you get a short note or a question on rods and cones, you can differentiate it as you were differentiating before. I have drawn this rods and cones. We will differentiate on points like what are the number, what are the contents and their functions. So let's see the number of rods. The rods are about 110 to 120 million rods in each eye. Okay, and cones are about 7 million cones in each eye. As we discussed before, rods contain a pigment called rhodopsin and cones contain a pigment called photopsin. Now there is a location of rods is in the periphery while the location of cones is in the center. Now how do I explain you this is, if you draw the structure of the eyeball, right, and there is an optic nerve that emerges out. Okay, now we take this as a center. So fovea centralis, where the image is found, is taken as a center. So there are numerous cones. So I'll draw this as C. There are numerous cones very close to the fovea centralis, and the rods are present in the periphery of the eyeball. Okay, rods are present in the periphery of the eyeball. As you would see that rods are very sensitive to light. So even a dim light that falls on the rods, it will get sensitized, but the cones are less sensitive to light and they would require a large bright light, right? So the next point you can put it as more sensitive to light. Rods are more sensitive to light while cones are less sensitive to light. And therefore you can put it as rods are responsible for black and white vision and the cones are responsible for color vision. Now we see the next point. Both rods and cones contain a protein molecule called as opsin and retinal. Now retinal is same in both rods and cones. Retinal is same in rods and cones, but the opsin molecule changes. Now what is that opsin that changes is the opsin is of only one variety in rods while the opsin is of three varieties in cones. The opsin is of only one variety in rods and opsin is of three varieties in cones, that is red, green and blue. So there are three types of opsins in cones, that is called as red opsin, or you can put it as red cone, green cone and blue cone. Okay, the red cones are 60%, the green cones are 30% and the blue cones are 10%. The vision that we get, because it is the rods are very sensitive to less, even they are very sensitive to light, it can respond even to dim vision. Therefore when we go for in a dark room also, after some time we can see very clearly what is in the dark room, and that type of vision is called scotopic vision. Scotopic vision. The vision we get even in a dark room, it's because of rods and therefore it is called scotopic vision. Now cones respond only to bright light, therefore that vision is called photopic vision. So it is also called light adapted vision, while the vision that is given by rods is called dark adapted vision. Now the rods are very sensitive to light with a wavelength of 550 nanometers, while cones are having different sensitivity depending on the type of color. Red cone, it is 570 nanometer, while green cone 535 nanometer and the blue cone 445 nanometer. So I think this helps us to understand the difference between rods and cones. Okay, so we go ahead with the next topic, that is layers of retina. Now having understood the structure of the eyeball in short, for physiology very rarely a question is asked on structure of eyeball, but if at all it is the same like in anatomy, structure of the eyeball and the functions. So most of the time the question is asked is on layers of retina, optic pathway, or it is also called visual pathway. So these two are commonly asked, plus the errors of refraction, rods and cones. So having understood the structure of the eyeball, having understood what are rods and cones, then we go on to see what are the layers of retina. Now layers of retina is when you take a TS section of the retina, you would see it is made up of 10 layers. So this diagram you should be able to draw in the exam and explain the layers. The layers, the nomenclature of the layers only will explain their functions. So along with me, I hope you all draw this diagram so it is very well understood. We go on with the layers of retina. All you can see it as 10 layers of the retina. So now we are going from outside to inside. So I am drawing the retina from outside, then we go to inside. So the outermost layer or the first layer is called as the pigmented layer. So if you draw along with me, it will be very easy for you to understand. We don't want a very artistic diagram, but yes, easily understood by all. So once it is understood, it becomes easy for you all to explain also. So this pigmented layer, as the name suggests, it is called as pigmented cell layer. Pigmented cell layer. So this is the first layer and it consists of numerous pigments of melanin. Now this melanin absorbs most of the light that enters our eyeball and doesn't allow the light to go further away or far away. So it doesn't allow the light to reflect or refract. So here all the light absorption takes place, and it contains the pigment that is melanin. Now those who are albinomers or those who don't have melanin, so they have problem with this vision. So you would see those who have got albinomo, or you can say less pigment, less melanin in their eyeball, so they cannot absorb lot amount of light in their eyes. So our first layer is called pigmented cell layer. As the name suggests, it contains of numerous pigments, and these pigments are made up of melanin. Right. We go ahead. Our next layer is layer of rods and cones. So there are numerous rods and cones over here. So as we have seen that the rods are in millions while the cones are very less. We have got cones very less in number. इरेजर आहे का कुणाकडे? So all the nucleus should come in one line, so it becomes very easy for us to tell about the next layer. The nucleus should come in one line, and what we do is just draw this small structure nucleus together. There are many rods, so you can just draw two cones and still many rods. Right. So this is our nuclear layer that comes in one line, and it has got a supporting membrane that supports it. Now this is how our rods look like. This is what we have drawn in our previous diagram, rods and cones, right? Okay, so our second layer is layer of rods and cones. Okay, then this, that is the supporting membrane, is also called as the outer limiting membrane. It is called outer limiting membrane. Again I am telling you, we are drawing the diagram from outside to inside. So this is the pigment cell layer is the first layer, second is the layer of rods and cones, third is the outer limiting membrane. Now these axons, they synapse over here. So they synapse with, now whom they will synapse is with bipolar cells. So our next diagram is a layer of bipolar cells. You can see this. I hope it is clear. So these bipolar cells are sending many dendrites over here to synapse with the axons of, okay, so they crisscross over here and they form a synapse, and this synapse is also called, sorry, before we go that, we go on to this fourth one, that is the outer nuclear layer. Now whose nuclear are these? The nuclear of rods and cones. Then is the fifth layer is this synapse, and that is called as the outer plexiform layer. Again I am repeating, we drew the first layer from outside to inside we are drawing. We drew the first layer, which is called as a pigmented cell layer. It contains of numerous pigments, that is melanin, and it absorbs all the light that enters the eyeball. Now where the light is going to enter, I think the light is going to enter from here. So this is the place where the light is going to enter, right? So this, we can put this as a light. Yes. So light is coming in this direction. So the light has to pass all the 10 layers and ultimately reach the first layer, that is the pigmented cell layer, and where it will getting totally absorbed. A second layer is the layer of rods and cones. So you can draw like this. And these rods and cones are held together with a membrane that is called as the outer limiting membrane, which is just a supporting membrane. After that comes our next layer is the nucleus of all the rods and cones, therefore it is called outer nuclear layer. Next, the axons of the rods and cones, they synapse with the dendrites of the other type of cells, which are called as the bipolar cells, and these synapses are called as outer plexiform layer. Next, you can see all these nucleus, and this all nucleus is called as the inner nuclear layer. Inner nuclear layer. Now I will tell you the names of these cells. They are called as bipolar cells. They are called as bipolar cells. Now along with bipolar cells, there are some other cells also, and they are called as the horizontal cells. And there are some other cells that directly connect the rod to the next layer, and they are called as the amacrine cells. So therefore it is called as the inner nuclear layer, which consists of, I'll tell you the another names, bipolar cells, large number are bipolar, horizontal cells and amacrine cells. Okay, and amacrine cells. Okay. Now we'll just draw these connecting lines. The horizontal cells can connect and synapse the rods. Okay. Right. Now I am drawing the axons of bipolar cells. The ones which I have drawn in yellow are all bipolar cells. If you remember, when we had studied neurons, neurons are of many types, out of which one type was bipolar, having only one axon and one dendrite. So they are called as bipolar cells. These bipolar cells are connecting the rods to another type of cells, which are called as ganglion cells. Now the ganglion cells I draw in blue color. Okay. So here they are synapsing. Again, this seventh layer will be a synapse over here, and therefore it is called as the inner plexiform layer. Inner plexiform layer. Okay. And you would see the cell over here, and these cells are called as ganglion cell layer. Ganglion cell layer. Now axons of all these ganglions, axons of all these ganglions are going to form the optic nerve. Therefore it is called optic striatum. Okay, so our next layer would be optic striatum. So this is our ninth. Right? Ninth is optic striatum, and just below that there is a supporting membrane. Now this was outer limiting membrane, and this is called inner limiting membrane. So there are 10 layers. This is our 10th point. 10th layer is the inner limiting membrane. Again I am repeating now. Understood with this? Pigment cell layer, the outermost part of the retina. Okay, we are going from outside to inside. So outermost part is the first layer, that is pigmented cell layer consisting of melanin. It absorbs all the light, doesn't allow the light to get reflected. Second layer is a layer of rods and cones. You should draw numerous rods, a few cones, because rods are about 100 to 120 million in each eyeball, and cones are about 7 million in each eyeball. They are supported by a layer that is called as the outer limiting membrane. Below that you would see the nucleus of all these rods and cones, and they are called as outer nuclear layer. These rods and cones synapse with the dendrites of bipolar cells. They are called as the outer plexiform layer. Then you would see the nucleus of many types of cells, and therefore it is called inner nuclear layer. And what are the types of cells? Bipolar, horizontal and amacrine. Okay. So, and these synapses of the bipolar cells and the ganglion cells are called as the inner plexiform layer. Next you would see the the nucleus of these ganglion, therefore it is called ganglion cell layer. And the axons of all the ganglion, they come together and they form what is called as the optic nerve, or therefore it is called optic striatum. So this further is going to form the optic nerve, right? And this optic nerve is the second cranial nerve, and this optic nerve is further supported by a membrane that is called inner limiting membrane. So all 10 layers should be by heart. If you understand this, then we can go ahead, and you would see that the rods and cones are the receptors. The bipolar nuclear cells are considered as first order neuron. Ganglion cells are considered as second order neuron, and the optic nerve that will end in the thalamus would be considered as a third order neuron. Again, should I repeat this again? Right. So 10 layers, all 10 layers should be known. Now the light is going to fall here. This is our inner part of the eyeball. So from where the light will come? The light will come from here. So this is the place where the light will fall. So the light has to pass or traverse all these layers and then reach the pigmented layer, right? Then the rods and cones are stimulated, and the stimulus will pass through the optic nerve directly to area number 17 in the occipital region. So again I am repeating, layers of the retina. There are 10 layers of the retina. You should by heart this. Once you draw this, it's easy to understand also. There's no need to by heart. Once you know the diagram, easy to draw also. So let's begin with the first layer, that is the pigmented cell layer. Second layer is a layer of rods and cones. Third is a layer that is supporting the rods and cones. Therefore it is called outer limiting membrane. And the fourth layer is made up of all the nucleus of rods and cone. It is called outer nuclear layer. Fifth is the synapse of these rods and cones to the bipolar cells. That's called outer plexiform layer. Sixth is a nuclear layer. It is called as inner nuclear layer, right? The outer nuclear layer was the layer of all the nucleus of rods and cones. Inner nuclear layer is made up of numerous nuclei. Now which are the types of cells? Largely bipolar cells, few horizontal cells and few amacrine cells. Now what does this horizontal cells do? Bipolar is actually connecting the rods and cones to the ganglion cells. So what is the function of this horizontal cells? It does not allow excess signal to pass through the optic nerve. Now when we are looking at one object, now even if you look at the blackboard or if you are looking at someone, but you can see the images around also, but they are not clearly defined. So if I am looking at the blackboard, I can see the blackboard very clearly, but the images which are around the blackboard, like if there are charts, if there's a wall next, or if there's a window around, I can just vaguely see, but I cannot clearly see. So that vision, even if I get it properly, this horizontal cell will allow only the vision that is focused in the center, that impulse to pass through the optic nerve. It will not allow other unwanted impulses to pass through the optic nerve. Okay, so that's the function of horizontal cells. Amacrine cells sometimes directly connects the rods and cones to the ganglion cells. Next, you would see the axons of the bipolar cells synapsing with the dendrites of the ganglionic cells, and that is called inner plexiform layer. Then you would see the layer of ganglion cells, which the axons of these ganglion cells are going to form the optic nerve, and it is called optic stratum or striatum. It is called striatum. And the last layer is the supporting layer of to this optic striatum. It is called inner limiting membrane. So light is passing in this direction. You should know that light is passing like this. Right? It has to traverse from the 10th layer, go to the first layer, and then the image will be formed. So I think this is very clear. 10 layers of the retina. Even if you get a full question, I think it is easy for you all to understand. Okay, now having understood very well rods and cones, the layers of the retina, let's see how the stimulation or mechanism of visual stimulation occurs. So let's imagine this green box that I have drawn is the shelf, or you can put it as a rod. So this box, green color box, is a rod, and the next cell that is down is a bipolar cell. Now you have understood the layer. First would be the layer of rods and cones, and then would be the layer of bipolar cells. Mechanism of visual stimulation is the same for rods and cones. So whether it is rod or whether it is cone, the stimulation will be the same. Now let's put it in 5 steps. The first step is, as I've drawn, light enters the rods. So here is where the light enters. So as light enters, what it does, it stimulates the protein molecule which is present, and that protein molecule is called rhodopsin. And this rhodopsin is going to further split into 2 structures called opsin and retinol. Right? So this, it breaks up. This breaking into 2 structures is also called bleaching. So breaking of rhodopsin is also called bleaching. Again, I am repeating, light enters the rods and cones. It stimulates the protein structure, that is the rhodopsin, breaks up into opsin and retinol. This breaking is also called bleaching. So this is called as bleaching of opsin and retinol. Now once opsin and retinol is formed, it stimulates the sodium channels. Okay. Now what it will do, it will stimulate the sodium. Let's say it's going to stimulate or open the sodium channels. Now here is what happens is, if light falls, if there is excess of light, the sodium channels close. So you must have seen in all the cell stimulation that the sodium channels open, but over here the sodium channels close. So when they close is no further stimulation is going to pass. So no stimulation is going to pass from the rod to the bipolar cell. Now you would wonder over here, when the light is entering, there is no stimulation passing, but the bipolar cells are of 2 types. One that gets stimulated to hyperpolarization and one that gets excited to hypopolarization. Now what happens over here, when the sodium channel is closed, whatever neurotransmitter was present here before, it gets hyperpolarized and the bipolar cells gets excited. Now the neurotransmitter over here is glutamate. Okay, it is glutamate. Again I am repeating, when light enters, the sodium channels close. So whatever the glutamate was present over here, that causes the stimulation of the bipolar cells and the impulse to go ahead, right? So we'll begin again. When light enters, it stimulates rhodopsin, breaks up or bleaching occurs into opsin and retinol, and this opsin and retinol stimulates sodium channel, but here the sodium channels do not open, they close, and because they close, the bipolar cells are wondering what happened, where is my neurotransmitter, how do I pass the impulse ahead. So it utilizes the glutamate or the neurotransmitter that was just present over here or stored before, and it gets excited with the help of this glutamate or neurotransmitter, and the impulse goes ahead. In some books they are given bipolar cells of two types of bipolar cells, one that gets stimulated to hyperpolarization and one that gets stimulated to hypopolarization. So this was about when light enters. Now let's see when there is no light. So when you open your eyes and are in a dark room and there is no light at all, what would happen is, yes, there is no breaking up, you would see there is no bleaching or no formation of this retinol, and opsin is not formed, but over here what will happen, the sodium channels, they open, and as the sodium channels open up, they secrete out the neurotransmitter glutamate in large amount, and which gets accumulated on this bipolar cells. So that's why we have got vision even in dark and we have got vision in light, but the vision in dark is not so clear, yes, because we are not those type of animals which we have got a large amount of rods and cones, and therefore we cannot see clear. Yes, there is a dim vision, that is in darkness. Now this is what happens when there is no light, more glutamate is getting accumulated on the bipolar cells, which is utilized when the light enters, right? Now let's begin with another very important topic, and that is called as optic pathway. It is also called as visual pathway. The fibers of the optic tract, they go to the posterior part of the eyeball, and further down they are carried to the occipital region of the brain, where they end in area number 17, or it is also called as a visual cortex, where the vision is actually formed or understood, you can say very well. Let's see how this tract travels posterior to the brain. Now if you see the eyeball, as the image falls on the retina, the image is carried on the with the help of optic nerve. Now the temporal part of our vision, okay, that vision is formed on the nasal part of our eyeball, and the nasal vision or the center part of whatever we see, it is formed on the temporal region of the eyeball. So this eyeball is divided into two parts. One outer part is the temporal region and the inner part is the nasal region. The nasal region actually carries the temporal vision, and the temporal region actually carries the nasal vision. So let's label these parts. This is our left eyeball and this is our right eyeball. So it would be easy for us to understand. Now the fibers of the optic tract, they go posteriorly, and just above the pituitary gland there is a region called as optic chiasma. Here they cross. So the nasal fibers, they cross. So the nasal fibers I am drawing in yellow, and they cross in this region that is called as optic chiasma. Okay. Now this is just present above the pituitary gland, and it's a large area. These fibers are also very thick, and only the nasal fibers of the eyeball cross. So if you see, the right nasal part of the eye actually crosses over and forms the left optic tract, and the left eyeball nasal region crosses and forms the right optic tract. So till here, now let's draw the temporal nerves. This is how the temporal region of the right eyeball nerve would come, and this is how the temporal region of the left eyeball nerve would come. Okay, so these together here, before crossing, they are called as the optic nerves. So before crossing they are called optic nerve, and the crossing only occurs of the nasal fibers. Now over here they are called as optic tracts. These tracts go posteriorly and they end in the thalamus, and in the thalamus they end in the superior colliculus of the thalamus, dorsal superior colliculus of the thalamus. Sorry, it is called as a lateral geniculate body of the thalamus. Superior colliculus is of the cerebellum. So here they end in lateral geniculate body of thalamus. And some fibers, they go interiorly and they enter and end in the superior colliculus of cerebellum. Superior colliculus of cerebellum. You see this? If it is clear, it's clear. Should I shift here? Up? Yeah. Okay. Now the lateral geniculate body of the thalamus is going to form a relay station for the next fibers to originate. So from here the next fibers, they originate and they are called as optic radiations. So there are many fibers that are originating from this lateral geniculate body and ultimately ending into the area number 17 of the occipital region. So here is area number 17. So these fibers which arise from the lateral geniculate body, they are called as optic radiation. Now they end in an area. This area is called as area number 17. So this area is called area number 17, and circumferencing around it are another two areas, area number 18 and 19. Our main area of vision is area number 17, and 18 and 19 area are also called as the visual memory areas. So now what we have seen or what we have been taught, what is the shape of an apple or what is the shape of a ball, this goes in area number 18 and 19 as memory. So once we see it again, which is carried from this area number 17, we can understand what that vision is. So these are visual memory areas, 18 and 19. Now what is the function of this lateral geniculate body? Two functions. One, it acts as a relay station for carrying the fibers of the optic tract ahead. Also it is a gate where there is an optic radiation that arises. The impulses from the vision are carried to area number 17. So this is how the optic tract would look like. Again I am repeating, we should know this. If you see this eyeball, nasal part of the eyeball, they cross at the optic chiasma, while the temporal fibers of both the eyeball, they do not cross. I am drawn the temporal fibers in green, nasal fibers in yellow. Crossing will occur at the optic chiasma. The further those tracts are called as not as optic nerve, but they are labeled as optic tract, and they end in the lateral geniculate body of thalamus. From here some fibers go towards the cerebellum and end in the superior colliculus of the cerebellum. From the thalamus arises many fibers which are called as optic radiation, and ultimately they end in area number 17. So this is all about the physiology of the optic pathway. Now let's see about applied physiology. Now, most commonly about optic tract, what happens is if there are tumors of the brain, they press on any of the nerves of the optic tract, and that would cause difficulty in vision, and certain part of the area of the eyeball, a certain part of our vision we cannot see clearly, and therefore the patient comes to us and with saying that only I can see only lower half or upper half, or I cannot see the left side, I have to turn my neck to completely to see the left side. So all these are because of tumors in the brain, gliomas, tumors, aneurysms, or cerebrovascular accidents that would commonly press on this optic nerve, optic tract, optic chiasma, and cause difficulty in vision. So let's see few lesions. So our first lesion would be A lesion is if there is a tumor that is totally pressing on the left optic nerve. Now the left optic nerve is taking the supply from the left eyeball totally, so our left eyeball vision is lost. So this is how the person will say I cannot see totally with my left eye, and this is how would be the vision of any tumor pressing on the left optic nerve. Now if a tumor is pressing directly in the center, most commonly is the pituitary tumors that press directly in the center, where there is a crossing of the nasal fibers of both the eyeballs, and it would produce this particular vision. So sorry, let's see this. If this A lesion is there, it is called anopia. Anopia is complete loss of vision. Anopia. Upia means normal vision. Anopia means complete loss of vision. Now in B, what would happen is the temporal vision of both the eyeballs is lost, and therefore it is called bitemporal hemianopia. It is called bitemporal hemianopia. Hemi means half, anopia. Bitemporal hemianopia. Now if there is a tumor that is pressing from outside, from both or the optic chiasma, but not pressing in the center, so you would get something like this, and this is called binasal hemianopia. Binasal hemianopia. Now again, if you get some tumor that is pressing on this optic tract, then you would get the left eyeball, the nasal vision is lost, while the right eyeball, the right eyeball again, the temporal vision is lost, but the person cannot see anything on the right side. So it is called as right homonymous hemianopia. So the person says that I cannot see anything on my right side. So right totally is lost. So because of the left optic tract pressing, the person's right side vision is totally lost. If it presses on the right optic tract, then totally left side vision is lost. So this much can be, you can write in the exam. At least these 4 types you should know, right? Stop here.